F1's first pre-season test ended with the familiar sight of Mercedes on top, courtesy of Valtteri Bottas's final day time. But what do we really know about the relative pace of the teams, especially given Red Bull and Ferrari didn't set remotely comparable times? Gary Anderson, you've been crunching the numbers and the data. What do you know?
Well, yeah, I've been crunching some numbers because everybody's using different tyres. Obviously, there's different fuel loads, which we really can't, account for. But if you consider that the top teams usually try and do a professional job, so I'm sure they're running, with a decent amount of fuel in the car at all times, whereas some of the smaller teams might just take a chance at running a little bit lower fuel. But still, it's all tightened up quite a lot. Mercedes, again, crunching it back to the C3 tyre, the medium tyre, because that's what the majority of the runners have been using. Each side of that we've got the harder and the soft, but I've got a sort of delta, and I crunched the numbers back, and I've got Mercedes at a 1:16.432, which again it's comparable to last year's testing time. Nothing sort of too dramatic. They haven't moved forward that much, but I'm sure there's more to come there. And then it's followed by Red Bull at a 1:17.135. So again, Red Bull on the circuit looks very, very good, and I'm sure that time is a bit of a sandbagging time. They really haven't tried to set much time. They've a good time because they've been running the harder tyre most of the time, so they haven't really tried to do too much. And then we've got Racing Point, and it's I suppose people call it a 2019 Mercedes clone. But that's fully legal, lots and lots of pictures taken, and go off and get your designers to copy it. You can do what you want with it. But they're 1:17.347, and very consistently at that as well. So that to me is the top three. I mean, they've done a very, very good job. The reliability of all the teams has been fantastic, but the grid has definitely shut up.
Well, the Mercedes has run reliably, consistently. We've seen some hints of long-run pace that's very impressive from them as well. So a good day for the team just behind us. But Scott, Ferrari. We voiced some concerns about their car previously on videos on the race. Mattia Binotto, the team principal, has admitted they're behind. So how seriously should we be taking Ferrari's struggles, in inverted commas perhaps they should be? Are they just being conservative and cautious, or is there really some ground to be made up?
I think it's certainly been an imperfect start to testing. If you've got your driver who's meant to be in the car on day one, it turns out to be battling the flu, so you have to give your other driver a call at 6:45 in the morning to say you've got to hop in the car today. Then you have a car that's not quite responding the way you want it to, and then obviously they've had a setback on the engine side as well. They need to change the engine after a problem. So it has been a bad start to testing for Ferrari. Mattia Binotto referenced the fact that this time last year he was a lot more optimistic, and we're not talking about Ferrari going out and setting ballistic lap times last year and everyone being like, oh, they're the favourites. Just he means relative to how easy they found it getting lap time on certain tyres, on certain fuel loads, and doing these sort of longer runs. They don't actually have the lap time in the car. I'm not saying that means that being 1.8 seconds off the pace or wherever they end up after this week or next week of testing means they'll go to Australia and be qualifying 13th or 14th. But what it means is that they are not quite where they want to be, and they will turn it up next week and the performance will come and they'll be the second, maybe the third fastest team. But right now they're not ahead, they are behind. Ferrari wouldn't be saying that lightly, and I think they've got a lot of work to do. They've changed things on their car. They're working through quite extreme measures of setup, and on the mechanical side, on the aero side, trying to understand what they've got with this new 2020 car. Obviously, time will tell if it's actually the progress they want it to be on the SF90 from last season. But right now, it's been an auspicious start at best.
Well, behind the top three, as ever, the midfield looks close. Gary Anderson, you mentioned Racing Point and your adjusted times as at the top of it. I think the Alfa Romeo, Kimi Räikkönen's time from earlier in the week was actually the fastest raw time, shall we say. So who's your pick of the midfield, and who's up there with them?
Well, Kimi and the Alfa, they used a very soft tyre, so in reality I'm bringing all the times back to the C3 tyre. So at the moment Racing Point are the fastest of that bunch. They're in third place at the minute, but as you say, Ferrari will probably get their act together. Then followed by Renault. So that leading midfield bunch has definitely shut down the gap to the leaders, and also it's got very, very competitive. I mean, there's hardly anything between them. The order goes Racing Point, Renault, AlphaTauri, McLaren, Alfa Romeo, Williams, and then we've got Ferrari in there, and Haas. So it's Haas have had a troubled test because they've been consistently slow, a bit like Ferrari. And if you take Ferrari time, as you say, 1.8 seconds, that's the equivalent of 60 kilograms of fuel in the car extra to Mercedes. And these cars only hold 110, so I'm not thinking it's all going to come just from taking fuel out of the car for Ferrari. But I think the midfield is definitely shut down. And I mean, when we're looking at Haas here being 10th out of the 10 teams, it's 1.9 seconds from the front. So it's not really the end of the world. It's a very, very tight pack. And a few kilograms of fuel will definitely shut them up. But I think we're looking to a season of a lot more competitive cars.
And Scott, a quiet test in terms of the timesheets for McLaren, which of course did lead the midfield last year. Lots of mileage for them, lots of work done. So I think there's reasons for McLaren fans perhaps to be optimistic from the first day. Lots more to come there.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a few people that remember 12 months ago when people were looking at McLaren and thinking it's not looking altogether too good for the 2019 car, and then obviously they made quite big progress. I think they were holding back a little bit in testing as well, so they might listen to this and say, oh, what happened to predictions that were being made 12 months ago? But we know that McLaren have come here with a very basic car, and that's not a scathing assessment of the MCL 35. That's the words from Carlos Sainz Jr. He's been driving it. He knows that there are bigger upgrades to come. So I think we're going to see more from what McLaren have to offer next week. There's some teams are talking about not bringing too many updates. Some teams are talking about next week is when you'll see the Australia spec car. But it's quite interesting to see that they've just been able to crack on and log the laps. Traditionally, that team has often found trouble in the first week of testing. So they've been getting down to hard work, but obviously it matters. The stopwatch is what matters, and also how it looks on track. And Gary, also you got a good look at McLaren. So what did you think of them, and also Williams, I suppose, because that's a team that's been sort of flying under the radar as one that's quite improved, especially compared to this time last year.
No, Williams have improved a lot, but yeah, the McLaren looks pretty good. As you say, they've been doing their homework. They have been doing a lot of running on the harder tyres, so they're just piling in the mileage to try and make sure they understand the car. All this running is about moving the car around, different ride heights, different roll stiffnesses, different vertical stiffnesses, and just checking that the aero balance is always okay. As far as Williams is concerned, last year's car for George Russell, who's a driver I rate very highly, was a bit of a white knuckle job around here, and this year now it's consistent. It's pretty good. It's looks like a normal racing car, which is a change from what they had last year. So yeah, I think both of them will be up there and battling.
Well, the race crew will be here throughout testing to give you all the latest analysis. Another 3-day test next week, of course. Please do like and subscribe. Check out our website, therace.com, and don't forget the hyphen. And if you've got some opinions to share on testing and what we had to say in this video, please do give us a few comments down there.